Hey there, I'm Sharon Welch, and welcome to A Brave Journey, the podcast to help you throw out those legacy belief and identity stories that you've been lugging around on autopilot for decades, so you can jump back in the driver's seat of your aliveness again. When you change your mind, you change your life. Are you ready? Let's get into it. It'll be fun. Well, hi there. Here we are in the inaugural episode of A Brave Journey, Reclaiming Your Identity After 40. And it seems to me that a good place to start is to have a conversation about what is an identity? What does that even mean when we're talking about that? And even if I know what an identity is or what my identity is that something I need to be reclaiming? Am I missing out on something here? I think we've all had these questions. It's legit. So let's start with that. Let's start with a basic collective agreed to understanding of what I mean when I say identity. Our identity encompasses the memories and experiences, relationships, beliefs, and values that create our sense of self. It includes all of the definitions and rules and even perceived boundaries or limitations that make us who we are. Fair enough? It's also entirely individual what that combination of things look like. It directs not only how we see ourselves, but also our communities, the world, and how we fit into it, and how things work in general. And often it's a combination of both internal and external factors. More on that in a minute. As it develops over time, it becomes this internal monologue that manifests itself externally in how you behave, function, and show up in the world. At its core, our belief system that's making up our identity is things that tell us what's right and what's wrong, what's true, what's false. Our beliefs really encompass everything that is a part of our world. And those beliefs give us direction as to whether something is acceptable or even virtuous. It's really our way of knowing how to successfully navigate our world or not. I say that our belief system may be comprised of both internal and external components. When I speak about external factors, I'm talking about things outside of ourselves that we use as measures of acceptability or models of sameness or comparison to help us understand, quote, where we fit in. These are often related to things like the job we have or the place we live, our role or status in our circle of friends, or the car we drive, the followers on our Instagram feed, where we went to school, the places we volunteer. You get the idea. Now, at some point in this conversation, maybe several weeks down the road, we're going to dive into how much weight those external things really should have in your identity. But for today, we're just going to set those aside because what I really want to talk about are those internal factors that make up your identity. The internal factors are initially those beliefs around the big rocks, like spirituality or connection to that which is greater, affinity for country of origin or race, perhaps, rules and definitions for being a good or virtuous person, attitudes or norms about money or family structure or age or gender, maybe. I say initially because we don't create our own beliefs at the beginning. We inherit them. So, spoiler alert, this is why ultimately we have the power, and I will go so far as to say the responsibility, to be eyes wide open as grown-ups to assess and reassess and curate the beliefs that we allow to stand as the ingredients for identity. We'll get to that. Okay, so that's a lot to take in at a first swipe of how we get to an identity and why it might be possibly something we want to reclaim, which we haven't really quite delved into yet. So, how does this even happen? How does this even start, this identity that we might want to reclaim? So, the ingredients of our identity are this belief system. When we're children, we inherit what I'll call a starter pack of beliefs from our family of origin, whatever that looks like. Let's illustrate that in one of the more common scenarios. You are a child in a family with parents or caretakers. I'll use those terms interchangeably. Those caretakers, in the course of raising you as a child, give you a set of beliefs, their beliefs, because that's what they know. They also got their beliefs from their families of origin, and so on through generations and hundreds and probably thousands of years. And each generation adds their own layers of experience and interpretation to this pack of beliefs. And that's just the way of the world. So you're given this set of beliefs. And your parents are your whole world. So you take those beliefs as gospel. That's just the way the world is. And that confidence in those beliefs is what, as a child, keeps you feeling safe and that you belong and that you're doing the right thing within your family unit, within your community. Perfect. Happens to all of us. It's how we all begin. So as you begin to mature as a child, eventually you get to a point where you begin to be able to critically think. You begin to be able to look at concepts and ideas and break them down and really start to think through them and do more of this thinking for yourself, more questioning. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, okay, well, that means that at that point, I am ready to change my mind about everything. Maybe I can do whatever I want. Well, you probably can, you probably could, but it's likely that you don't. I mean, you probably question and rebel and act out. It's what children do as they explore their boundaries. But since your beliefs have shaped your identity, you don't actually end up straying too far from them. Or if you do, it is rarely sustainable long term because the internal drive to be aligned and the external pressure to assimilate are strong. And here's why. Well, one of the reasons why. So your ego is always there in the background. It was just waiting for its chance to shine. Your ego, who has this job to keep you safe, to keep you right. And so as you get older and you get into this mode where you can critically think, you look at those beliefs and your ego wants you to be right. So your ego, because we don't know that we need to be on anything other than autopilot and just go along with our beliefs and whatever our internal monologue says, you start to find that your ego is gathering evidence that your beliefs are true and correct. So you develop this cognitive bias that you may not even realize that you have. So there you are, progressing through your childhood into early adulthood. So basically, your ego's mission is to find all the evidence it can that your belief system is correct, that your belief system is right and solid, and it's the way it is, and that's what we do. So whether it is the information that we take in from the world and filter through to the parts that make us right, or whether it's experiences that we have or actions that we take that seem to kind of set us up either to prove that our belief is true in a positive way, or when we try to do something outside of that belief and it goes terribly wrong, to also prove to us the same thing that, see, told you so, that doesn't work. The belief was correct, and this is what we do, and you saw what happens when you don't play along. This is pretty much the human condition. And for many, many, many people, I would say the majority of people, this is how we stumble or navigate our way through life. We have our belief system. We spend the rest of our lives on autopilot proving ourselves right. The good, the bad, and the ugly of it. And period. That's the end of the story. The view of the world that your belief system colors in for you really informs you who you need to be in that world. So all of those beliefs have now shaped this person who you now must live up to or down to, depending on what reality your belief system has designed. Let's not forget that, all of our identities that we've experienced so far in our lives have not been superstar. It just really depends on where we come from. But it's not something we can ignore either. As a human, we all need to have an identity. For most of us, that means going along with what we think is our one and only option, the one we were given or born with, so to speak. And what we find when we live in a life like that is that often we have to compromise on those little niggling voices that are telling us maybe we think differently. Maybe we are different. Maybe we want something different. But we have to push those down, right? Because that can't possibly be correct. My belief system says something else. So we go about going after the tick list of things that our belief system tells us are the indicators of being a successful and therefore worthy human. The job, the possessions, the lifestyle, the achievements, the family structure that we're supposed to have and should feel very accomplished and proud of ourselves about getting. And if those things aren't in fact in alignment with the identity inside us that wants to come through, which frankly, we probably don't even know is happening to us in the moment, then we beat ourselves up because we don't feel the way that we're supposed to feel, because we're bored with it, because we're uncomfortable with it, we're unsatisfied with it. And immediately our reflection comes back to us. It says there must be something wrong with us because our belief system says this is what we should be striving for. This is what we should be proud of. This is what brings us joy and safety. This is what will bring us love. I'll say it again for emphasis. We all need an identity. It makes me think of, did you ever watch Game of Thrones? There were a couple episodes, several episodes where it was really terrifying. There was this monastery kind of place where the people had no faces. They were all generic. The whole point was that they had no identity. In real life, that can be a scary place to be in. I feel like I've tipped my toe into that at one point in my journey when a large part of my identity was comprised of those external factors. And when many of those fell away in a perfect storm of what I call life quakes, I was lost and I felt like I had no identity. And for me, it was a terrible and scary place to be. It just seemed improbable, impossible that I didn't have an identity. It was a very low time in my life. We'll cover that, I promise you, at another time. But the point is, as humans, we all need an identity because it's that identity that allows us to figure out who our tribe is, where we fit in. And in the beginning, it's with our families of origin. It's with our community. It's in our society. It's in our world. We need to know what our identity is because that's how we make a value judgment on where we belong and what we should be doing with this life that we have. So think about that in your own life. It's true, right? So we have these identities, and for most of us, we've done the whole, set it and forget it. We're on autopilot. We have identities, we have beliefs, we're navigating the world based on those two things. So we have behaviors and habits that are true to our identities, which was formed by our beliefs. Are you seeing a pattern here? And there are aspects of that that work amazingly well for us. And there are aspects of that that don't. The aspects that work very well for us just reinforce our beliefs, and maybe rightly so. We've confirmed that our identity is good, our beliefs are good, everything's great. And then the challenges and struggles or boredom or failures or all of the different ways that we can negatively have things be perceived that happen in our life, we explain those away in a number of different ways, yet still within the construct of the identity that we have and the belief system that we hold and that we believe to be true because our ego tells us it must be true. So if you reflect on how you're going to go through your life, you will invariably find this to be true. If you're a person who believes that you have to put in a certain amount of time or a certain number of credentials to be able to get the promotion or raise at your job or at any job or a job you love, you will ultimately find that to be true. Your actions or inactions will likely bring about the results you expect based on your beliefs. You will prove yourself right pretty much every time. Or if you're someone who thinks, for example, you're not good with money and that's just the way it is, and you decide, nope, I want to be better at this. So you read a book or you take a course or you watch a YouTube video to learn how to be better with money. And it starts off and it's going really great and you're doing things that make you a little better at money. And then at some point it feels a little hard and then maybe you kind of slack off a bit. And the next thing you know, you're kind of back to where you started or maybe worse off. And again, you just proved yourself right that you're not good with money. So these are all things that will continue to happen in your life and you will explain away when things go well. And it's because you're right and your belief system is right. And if things go wrong, it's also because you're right and your belief system is right. Doesn't matter what it is. The problem with going through life on this sort of autopilot, which frankly is something most of us do because it's what we know, it's what we've been taught. Nobody sets us up in a masterclass in how to think outside of our acceptable belief system. Nobody does that. Not when we're children, not when we're teenagers, not when we're in college typically. But, we are starting to see more opportunity for that kind of mind expansion. We believe that our beliefs are our beliefs. Our identity is our identity because that's how we've been conditioned. These are unmovable, unchangeable things. Again, largely because as humans, we need to feel safe and we need to belong. And so when we have those feelings of, isn't there more? Or I guess this is what I deserve, or I guess this is all there is, right? Or we just assume that this is the way it is. This is all how life works. We've got to have that strife, got to have that sacrifice. We have to have that, take that responsibility and to do the right thing, all based through the lens of our belief system and our identity. It's this sort of, hamster wheel habit trail that we all live on until we don't. And to add yet another level of complexity to all this, we're existing and growing and moving forward in a world that continually gives us more input about what we should be doing, about what we should be thinking, about what we should be feeling, or not to any of those things. And those keep layering onto us, layer after layer after layer of the new thing or the latest thing that it's going to take for us to be acceptable, to be successful, to belong. And when we're on autopilot, we just keep accepting those layers because, again, we have belief systems that tell us this is what we're supposed to do. So you arrive to midlife. 40 was sort of an arbitrary number, but anyway, whatever that means to you, you arrive to that midlife period. And it's likely that at this point, you have had an innumerable number of layers in your belief system that have insulated you from yourself in an effort to belong in a world that has an opinion on everything, has a rule for everything, and you're just going along to get along. So you keep accepting these layers that somebody else gave you, either a collective voice in your community, in your family, or a single voice, maybe some of those from someone or multiple people who are very influential in your life, from experiences that you've had. And now that you've extrapolated across all experiences, must be true in every situation, layer after layer after layer. And what I think many of us find as we get to this middle part of our lives, something happens, or a lot of things happen, as happened to me. Something falls apart. We lose a job. We lose a loved one. We become empty nesters. We get a big promotion and buy a big house with our big new check. And now we're in a different tax bracket and we have a different neighborhood and different friends. We get a divorce, whatever it is. So many different things as we get to the middle of our lives can happen that are big, sweeping things, good and bad. And all of a sudden, there's something inside us that says, I don't feel comfortable in my own skin. Or what am I missing? Or is this all there is? Who am I? You can call it a midlife crisis. I don't think it's a crisis. I think it's a call to action. But anyway, those thoughts, those are the indications. When those things happen to us, that's the time where there's an invitation to reclaim your actual identity. And your actual identity may be one that wants to come out that has nothing to do with the belief system that you inherited and that you continued to accept layer upon layer on your whole life while you were on autopilot. But it's also not something that you're going to be able to change without re-looking at the belief system that created it. And it's also not something you're going to be able to change and do differently if you're going to hold up your current identity and belief system as this untouchable monument to yourself and to the world. And if you don't want to look at it and you don't want to change it, that's okay. Not everybody does. But for those of you that hear that voice, feel that niggle, you can actually do something differently. So when you think about your own belief system, which is something I really think is a great exercise, to really take some purposeful time to try to write out as many of your own beliefs as you have, at least as many as you can identify, it's very interesting to go through and write that down on paper, the things that you believe to be true. It could be a little triggering though, right? Because like I said, your ego wants you to be right. So you're going to argue with yourself maybe a little bit as you write these things down. If you need a little help with that, as an aside, I do have a little journal workbook on uncovering your beliefs so that you can re-examine them. And then as you go through the process of figuring out if your identity is really the identity that you want or that you're meant to have, if you would love to have that, I would love to send it out to you. So just reach out to me and I'll get that to you. But in general, it's important to know what your beliefs and values are before you can possibly examine them, curate a new set that supports more the identity that you want to have or the identity that is quietly calling to you from under the layers of all the beliefs you have inherited or collected over time. But let me caution you, and this is a bit of a reiteration, when you know that there's something out of alignment in your life or a lot of things out of alignment, the first thing we want to do is kind of hit the easy button. We want to read the book. We want to take the course. We want to go on the retreat. We want to watch the YouTube video, whatever it is. We're just going to go ahead and change our behavior. We're going to go ahead, change our habit, do something different. Unfortunately, I think over time in our relationship with each other, you'll learn this is a fortunately situation, but you cannot have lasting habit and behavior change without having the identity that supports it, which means looking at the belief system that created the identity. It's all connected. Your beliefs are the ingredients for your identity. Your behaviors and habits are the external expression of your identity. You cannot sustain a behavior or habit that is in conflict with who you are, with your identity. You just can't do it. Anybody who has tried to lose weight but still maintained the belief that they were an overweight person or that they were someone who struggled to lose weight, or anyone who knows what it's like to try to be a money whiz and still maintain the identity and belief that they're not good with money, anybody who believes that it's impossible to get ahead in their job or vocation without a certain list of external criteria, any of those or a million other things, if you've ever had that experience where you just tried to power through changing a behavior or a habit, like those New Year's resolutions maybe, and you found that you were all fired up and, motivation took you pretty far, motivation and work ethic and all those things, and you powered through. And at some point, almost inevitably, you fell back a little bit and then a little bit more. And at some point, you find yourself right back where you started. You're tired, you're demotivated, it just didn't stick. And that is not a commentary on your motivation. That is not a commentary on your work ethic. What that is the fact that your identity rules. And if you never got to an identity that you were the person who had the things that you were trying to get, be better at money, lose weight, deserve to earn a living doing what you love, any of those things, if your identity didn't already reflect that, you will never maintain that new behavior or habit. You just won't. Keep trying it if you want to, but I'm telling you, let me save you some time. So this idea that when you feel the niggle, when you feel the dissatisfaction, when you feel the discomfort in your own skin, as you start to have some of these things in midlife, these big changes that, call your identity out and what you're doing in your life into question, it's not enough to just try to change a habit, change a behavior. Sorry to tell you, there's other work to be done. And so this is really what I mean when I talk about reclaiming your identity. I'm not talking about reclaiming the identity of your childhood, because even that was created with inherited beliefs. But we're far enough along now in our lives. We've had experiences. We've seen enough things that we are in a well-informed enough position to go back and reevaluate all of those layers of beliefs that we've collected over time and through experience, and from people that we know and trust, and from people that have challenged us, to really take a look at those and curate them, reevaluate them. Which ones still work for us? Which ones don't? And the identity that we're trying to reclaim and uncover is the one in that quiet voice, not the ego that's yammering at you all day long, as well-intentioned as your ego is to keep you safe and allow you to belong. There is also that quiet voice, the authentic voice that knows exactly who you are and who you want to be. And that's going to require you to do the scary thing of letting go of some of the beliefs that no longer serve you. And I say it's scary because one of our core human beliefs is probably that some of these beliefs we have to be acceptable, that we have to have these beliefs to be in the club, right? So the work is really looking at every single one of those beliefs to decide which ones we choose now to keep as grown-ass adults. We get to choose. And also which ones no longer serve us. And we can lovingly say to them, thank you, you've served your purpose, and now I release you. And as we work through that process, and as we mindfully start to listen to that inner voice where we find the true joy and contentment, when we're really being ourselves, that identity that we really want to have the beliefs that support us, that will naturally begin that coalescence in our favor. And the ones where there's gaps, we'll go seek the knowledge that we need to have an informed belief that supports this authentic identity for ourselves. That's the identity we can reclaim, or maybe discover for the first time. And when we reclaim that identity, that's when we can manifest that in the behaviors and habits and live our lives in the way that supports that true identity. Because that identity supports those behaviors and habits and activities in our lives. And that's when we're really creating the lives that we want to have. I'm really, really excited to have this forum to talk about these concepts and ideas and the challenges and the joys of them as we navigate midlife. Whew, that's a lot for a first go, right? But I think it's important to have a foundation to springboard from. I have so many directions we can and will go over time. Next time, I want to share with you a conversation I had with a group about conforming for comfort, which I think is so pertinent to this journey. And as we go forward, I want to bring on guests who are going through these things or who have gone through these things to talk about their stories. Their stories are also our stories. In fact, maybe you're one of those people we should be hearing from. So reach out if you have a great idea for a dialogue we can have here. Nobody wants to hear my monologues for weeks on end, you know? And also definitely reach out if I can send you the little journaling guide to help you start to tease out those beliefs that may be blocking you from really expressing the identity you want to live in. I would be honored to share that with you. Hey, thanks for listening to A Brave Journey. I'm so happy we're here. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow and leave a review and share this with a friend who could benefit too. See you next time.